Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic Roundtable show. We've got a small panel, but determined. They might have been depleted by the disease that's sweeping the world, but they're great panelists. We've got a great show on this Friday, the 13th of March. We record this normally at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and you can join us and watch the show live on the WP-Tonic Facebook page. So I'm going to let my powerful but small panel introduce themselves. I've got Spencer. Spencer, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Sure. Spencer Foreman from LaunchFlows.com.
And I've got my friend Sally. Sally, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Sally Getch, the WP fangirl and organizer of the East Bay WordPress meetup, which has had to cancel its event for this weekend, and it will be going online for April and May.
All right, wise, all online. Before we go into the main stories of the week, I want to talk about one of our great sponsors, and their support of the show is much appreciated. And that's LaunchFlows. And what does LaunchFlows do for you and your clients? Well, basically, if you're looking for a plugin that can help you build modern funnels, not only in WooCommerce, but all sorts of funnels, you need to look at LaunchFlows. And, you know, a lot of people are really into their funnels. They spend a lot of money with ClickFunnels. It can be up to $297 per month. But with some free plugins that work with LaunchFlow, and your most popular page builder plugin can be one of them, you can, for yourself or for your clients, you can build really fantastic funnels for them. Now, if that sounds really interesting, go over to LaunchFlows, and they're giving us a great deal as well. You can use a coupon code WP-Tonic Rocks. I repeat that, WP-Tonic Rocks, and you'll get 25% off the price of the plugin. What more could you ask for? So go over there. So let's start the show. WooCommerce 4 lands with a new admin interface, updated onboarding experience. What did you think of this one, Spencer?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I spent all my time in WooCommerce with LaunchFlows and otherwise. So I was originally going to hold off on actually using this live because I wanted to test any 4.0 or 0.0 something, especially WooCommerce. You should wait. I have some automated update processes that tripped up and it updated it. So far, so good. I think from what I read in the documents, most of what it does is actually not going to affect the front end or not going to affect the products. One of the things that is happening, which is a really positive outcome, is that the development cycle is keeping up with people's starting to grow into larger businesses and more activity with WooCommerce. So primarily it was their actions and the things that have to do with tracking orders on the back end that needed to be improved, because when you scale, you need more efficiency. So long story short, I still recommend anybody who uses WooCommerce, don't jump into this, because a lot of plugins that use WooCommerce will have to catch up, right, with the release. But since I accidentally fell into the pool with my clothes on, it didn't break anything. So that was the good news.
What do you reckon, Sally?
Well, I had the Spencer and I fell into the same pool. We were maybe pushed simultaneously. I have a couple of clients on WooCommerce, 3, maybe 4, and the updates have not been a problem. I mean, basically, I'm sitting there and manage WP, and it says, "Yo, you've got to update the WooCommerce database on these 4 websites." So I went in and updated the database and noticed, there's, this list of actions and various notices about X and Y, and just kind of, checked things. It's like, well, everything seems okay at the moment. We're going to have to probably look at some of this in greater detail, but it appears to be working. I mean, like Spencer, I usually prefer to wait a bit to make sure that all of the extensions have also been updated when that's necessary, because I have known for things to break when when something hasn't been updated to go along with the main plugin. So but it seems like this has been fairly smooth so far.
I do have a comment though. Wait, I do have a comment, which I didn't address, but now that Sally reminded me, and so one of the things that took me by surprise, even for WooCommerce or WordPress, and I have to apologize because I could be completely wrong, and maybe they did this already in 3.0, but I haven't done a fresh install of 3.0 in such a long time. I mean, normally I just have like a clone of whatever, is that the onboarding experience leaves you with such spammy bullshit from Jetpack that I was amazed. Here's what happens if I'm repeating what's been around since 3 point something, forgive me, but
I don't know, because I set these are all clients I've had for a long time, and so I've had WooCommerce installed forever.
Right?
Yeah,
exactly right. So what happens on a fresh install is, the process asks a series of questions. Reminds me of being at another company that I love and still use, but hate for their spamminess, which is GoDaddy, right? Years ago, Bob Parsons left, and then they just got more and more like, let me trick you into upsells. So you go through this process, and along the way, if you don't know any better to say no, it just keeps adding stuff and adding stuff. And even though I said no to all the important stuff about, no, I don't want Jetpack or MailChimp, and no, I don't want this other service or the optimization, they still put the bullshit plugin in place that is for the only purpose of having a huge Jetpack banner at the top. And even though I spend all my waking moments in WordPress, I had to really search around to figure out what the F just happened. Why is this banner here that I can't remove? Turns out that you have to search for the plugin that was added on in addition to WooCommerce that's only there for spamming their own stuff. I find this so offensive on so many levels that they can get away with installing a plugin that's so fundamental that adds a second plugin just to advertise their shit. If all of us did that, we'd be back to Windows.
Well, yes. I mean, this comes back to what Morton always says about
you and me, Sally. Everybody frozen. Oh my God,
we're fine.
Yeah, Spencer and I are fine. You're the one who's frozen.
John. We're fine. You're frozen.
Oh, it was me, was it? All right.
It was you, yes. No, I was just saying in response to Spencer that, it gets back to that that philosophical question that Morton is always raising is like, okay, this thing I'm considering doing, would I want everyone else to also do it?
Right.
If the answer is no, maybe I shouldn't do it.
Yeah, because that's what's wrong with this the parity of power, the balance of power is so off, because if anybody did it, even a Yoast, everybody would come down on them like a pile of bricks. But somehow Automatic thinks it's okay to violate all of the things they say are fundamental to a free plugin in their repository that installs a secondary plugin that's a phone home, and it spams your dashboard, and it tries to upsell you stuff it's like every single thing they said you shouldn't or can't or you'll be in trouble to do, and Otto will come to your house to make sure of that. They just go do. So I found that to be sort of a weird balance from, well, the plugin itself is improving and it's working really well. Maybe a couple things are going to need some speed improvements on the dashboard, but like to balance that, okay, well, here's the trade-off. It's a real odd juxtaposition. It's just hard to balance my emotions on that. So I did finally figure out how to turn it off, and at least they allowed you to turn it off. But if you had been stupid enough to choose all those options, then you'd have to remove all those other services, including Jetpack. And I thought that was just unfair.
Yeah, lovely. Just lovely. On to the next story. Why 543 kilobytes keeps me up at night? What do you reckon about this one, Sally?
He's got a lot of point. He's got a good point. It's like, why is a website with like nothing on it but a logo and text that heavy? And what the heck is it that we have been doing to our websites? Now we've seen, we've seen various articles about this kind of thing before. He's got some fairly practical tips in here about CSS and JavaScript and considering performance and considering the accessibility. I find there's if you want a little amusement, there's a link in here to a site called HTML, And, with all kinds of examples of bad practice taken from real life. Um, and that between, the problems with accessibility, the problems with just trying to, even see the thing if you're on a, slow phone connection, the problem with just the fact that, we have a lot of annoying stuff in terms of our pop-ups and notifications and various, social pressure.
So because you're still in the kind of studio press world, aren't you? In a big way. How do their themes, their framework theme, and then their child themes in general, how do they deal with accessibility and speed in general? In your opinion,
I think they're pretty good. I mean, it's the framework itself is pretty lightweight. There have been some child themes, usually by third parties, that loaded a shed load of scripts, but they are working on being pretty efficient. And then it's kind of a matter of, well, what do you add into it? I think, there is stuff in core WordPress that could be improved in this department.
So a bog standard child theme from Studio Press on the framework theme, when it comes to accessibility, where does it rate out of the box?
It rates pretty high in accessibility. They care about their structure, but of course, the big thing about accessibility is not just, well, how is this theme built, which you do want to have like the appropriate headings and skip links and titles and not hiding things, and most of that is also supports SEO, but then so much is, well, what do you put in there? What is it that you put in there? How is it that do you use your heading structure appropriately? Do you put alt tags on your images? Do you have alternatives for your video? Do you use some kind of a page builder or a block layout that is unbeknownst to you, not very accessible to the user? I mean, there are certain patterns for accordions or tabs that are really difficult, and others that are that are better. So I mean, there's accessibility is a huge thing, and it is a lot of stuff on top of just how you design the theme. So that the naked theme with nothing in it, if you did nothing but write text and use the correct heading levels, you'd be good. But and there are built-in contrast checkers for things like your colors and your paragraph blocks and stuff. It will nag you if you don't have enough contrast, but it's still so possible to mess it up.
Okay. So Spencer, first of all, what do you think of the article? And secondly, if let's say you were using Ashton of Elementor, is it really possible to get a really speedy site and also have it, accessible as well, quite reasonably easily?
Well, I mean, I think the article addresses a bigger picture point, but I have a slightly different takeaway from what that is. His point is that, we've come to the place in the world where even a blank page is half a megabyte. But what he doesn't address, which is where I'm going to go with this, is that in the world we live in, a megabyte is what a kilobyte used to be, right? I mean, it's like inflation, right? If you say somebody was a millionaire in 1890, that was like being a billionaire in 2020. And so if you look at the speed, I can't find anybody, even in my crappy Comcast connection, that is going to care about the difference of 1, 2, 3, 4 megabytes. It used to be that I would say not that long ago, your entire page should not have more than a megabyte of stuff on it because it would make a difference. But people were still on crazy.
It will make a difference to you if you're at a conference and everybody is simultaneously using the Wi-Fi.
Well, yes. I mean, there's undeniably.
It will make a difference to you if you're on a 3G phone.
Well, again, I'm going to address that point. So we live in a world of disparity because there are those that have the tools and the speed to do the things that a modern browser is capable of, including delivering content. Even if you look at a mundane site, when I say mundane, like everybody knows it, YouTube. You cannot use YouTube on a 3G. I know this because I had Verizon with unlimited, and then they kept pushing me to move from like my real unlimited to this pseudo unlimited, which essentially says after 20 gigabytes, you go to 3G. Try 3G on YouTube and you realize it's 35 minutes to load the first video. I mean, it's literally unusable. So that means that you're really not capable of living in the world we are in today with a 3G connection. You just aren't. Because even if your very precious website is only 200 kilobits per page, 99.999% of everything else your client is doing is going to be like YouTube, and they're not going to be able to function anyway. So it's like building for, I don't know, like one of those reenactments of the Civil War or something, like where they loaded the muzzles one ball at a time or something. I find that this article is useful for one thing, to make somebody aware that when they're building stuff, move the bar up to like a problem that we were dealing with this week. Somebody has a very intense membership site with WooCommerce and marketing automation and tagging and a CRM and all kinds of crazy stuff. You take the same conversation from 500 kilobits and you move it up to how fast does each of these pages load in a membership site? Well, there the difference is between 10 seconds and 25 seconds. That's significant because that means somebody may or may not be able to check out or buy. But the conversation is no longer about kilobits. It's about like, what is the processes? What are the processes going on that are slowing this up? So anyway, the long story short is I like his idea of being cognizant as and not being sloppy, just throw everything at it, it'll work. But on the other hand, there are so many freaking things to worry about as a web developer. How could we possibly be sitting there worrying about a use case that nobody practically could have anyway?
Oh yeah, never mind like the millions of people who live in India or rural Africa, or I mean, they may not be your customers, so you don't have to worry about them. But there are people who do.
But I just said, like, I'm not talking about visibility. I'm talking about like if they live in Indiana and they can't load a 1 megabyte page because they're on a dial-up, they're not going to be participating in the internet that we know about today anyway. They're just not. They can't load anything. Nobody can run on 3G.
I see where you're coming from. So my secondary part, you know, what's your experience like using, example, Astra of Elementor?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
You're using those two tools as examples, and I'm not excluding all the other page builders. Is it possible using an Astra theme with Elementor and for it to be, you know, accessible? And yeah, basically, what's your experience with that combination?
So interestingly, that's one of the things I'm focusing on this week, because with LaunchFlows, you know, it works with any page builder, but as a practical matter to build the sales and landing pages, the checkout pages, and so forth, the primary tool of choice is Elementor. And I also, again, sensitive to Sally's preferences and otherwise, wanted to give Gutenberg a fair shot. Now, here's what I found out. Unquestionably, in all of our testing, Divi is the main criminal here. I love Divi.
I'm sure Jonathan will be utterly shocked.
Yeah, I know. I love Divi for what it started out and what it was being, and there's so many fans. I love it for any designer who wants to build pretty stuff. But the facts are the facts are the facts. On the admin side of things and on the end user side of things, Divi is a hot mess of loading so many things that it catches itself up. In fact, in situations where Gutenberg, Beaver Builder, and Elementor are just flying like the wind, Divi is like in circle of death mode for no good reason whatsoever. I can't explain why they've gone the direction, but it's factually correct. So let me address the other two. Beaver Builder is really streamlined, but it's a victim of its own limitations in many ways. Yes, it will get you the result, but it's sort of, at this point, substandard in many ways to just using Gutenberg. So I kind of feel like when I'm doing the examples, like, why am I even bothering with this? What's the point? And Gutenberg was surprisingly, to me, efficient at getting the job done with putting the LaunchFlows stuff out there. But I found myself in many ways still going, who designed this interface? If they had just expanded the fucking windows a couple things, sorry, it would be so easy. But everything is hidden behind a trap door. But aside from that, surprisingly good results. Here's the total outcome answer. Astra is very lean and mean when you use it for its intended purpose, which is a whiteboard. And I mostly use Astra as a way to turn off the header, turn off the footer, turn off the breadcrumbs, do a full width page. It gives you an outstanding way, even without Pro, to just get that done. Plus, you can generate a free child theme immediately, so you can dump a bunch of stuff in there. So it's a great whiteboard to hang your magnets. Elementor does work incredibly efficiently on the back end, works incredibly efficient on the front end for a page builder, and it can work inside of somebody else's ecosystem. So for example, if you've got another theme besides Astra and it's already there, even if it's an old-fashioned visual page builder theme or X theme, Avada or whatever, it can work perfectly fine, which is what I recommend to people. I say, put in the free Elementor, don't load a billion add-on stuff. You don't need that. You just need the core of Elementor, and you will be very pleased for building certain content pages on those pages with Elementor. If you use Beaver Builder, I say the same thing. I'm like, look, if you want to struggle through the sales pages with Beaver Builder, do it. But otherwise, use Beaver Builder for the whole site. Just use Elementor for the sales pages. And finally, with Gutenberg, I'm torn because Gutenberg, like we were talking about, to me is more of the post-editor replacement. So if you're comfortable with the interface and feel like it's not holding you back mentally, just natively use Gutenberg and you'll get great results. However, you could also do the same thing, which is just use Elementor on certain pages and have Gutenberg for the rest of the site. I am going to be today announcing my same conclusion about Divi, which is I can't recommend anybody use Divi for any of the LaunchFlows page building or layouts. Instead, I'm going to say if you have a Divi site, use Elementor for the pages because Divi is a user experience.
If you have a Divi site, now would be a great time for a redesign.
Now would be a time to consider. Well, in fairness, up until a couple weeks ago, I still had LaunchFlows as a Divi theme with Elementor just to demonstrate it, but I finally shifted, and it was really dramatically different in terms of the performance on both the back and the front end, even in light of our previous conversation, which is like, I'm not talking 500 kilobits, I'm talking like 8 seconds difference to even load an admin page. An admin page, 8 seconds difference. Like I was sitting there looking at my watch every time I wanted to edit something. And that's just unfortunate. And that's knowing how to optimize it too.
Thanks for all that information. But
yes, that was very helpful.
Yeah, but just I just got one additional question. Like I said at the start of this, do you think with Astra and one of their child themes, one of their starter themes, with Elementor, what's your opinion of its accessibility out of the gate? Is it?
There's the plugin that lets you get the starter sites.
If you start, with Astra, with one of their starter themes, with Elementor, how accessible in accessibility standards is that kind of setup?
I can't speak to the design components, but I will say as a general thing, I looked yesterday, they've got a free plugin that actually is cross page builder compatible, right? So it's Elementor, Beaver Builder, I think there's Gutenberg and Divi. And so you could choose from any of 4 starter. I like the fact that for many people, we live in what I call a no code, no design method world, right? Nobody should be starting from scratch, even if you know what you're doing. So for that, the plugin is great. However, I do feel that there's certain compromises that have to be made, which is, it's like buying an off-the-shelf suit for your wedding or something, or a dress. You're gonna make a compromise. So when I looked at the designs, I was like, okay, it's fine if you have absolutely no clue what's going on, but you look like you're wearing your uncle's hand-me-down or something. That's what it is. Yeah, I can't say if it's accessible or not, but I can say
Well, there hasn't been a lot of it. I will have to do a post about this and see if there are some people. I'm just interested because it is 2020, isn't it? And it's been an ongoing criticism of WordPress and a lot of the themes is that they're grossly, when it comes to accessibility, they're really awful. I mean, truly awful.
It's like how you do things today. Let me explain one of the main differences. When it comes to form over function, all right, you can't do it. You have to go the other way around. You have to go function first, and the form adapts to it. And the primary reason for that is we live in a scroll up and down world. So for example, one of the things that used to be really snazzy and popular is horizontal scrolling. Well, do you know many people that are going to park their iPhone at the top so they can go like, let me just hang out here sideways for a while? I mean, sure, it's good if you're on YouTube and you're looking for the next video, but very few people on your business website are going to even figure out like, wait, I'm not going to go up and down with my thumb. I'm going to go and just sit here and hang out at the top.
Well, I mean, you know, I'm still a relatively new smartphone user, and I have to kind of figure out, well, what does happen if I, you know, swipe it this way or swipe? How was I supposed to know that I need to like swipe down from the top to see this or swipe up from the bottom to see that? It's like, it doesn't like, you know, walk you through that when you set it up.
And that's the point, right? Like, so when being an old codger, and we're all the same, let's say, like mindset, if you wanted the best opportunity for usability, it's for on mobile at least, not on a desktop, but on a mobile. Come up with a design that has one action. Swipe it up, swipe it down, press. That's it. I mean, and if you keep it that simple, it really doesn't matter that much what the design is, except those of us who've been around long enough to remember avocado appliances or bell-bottom jeans or big collars know that when you put certain design components,
I remember bell-bottom jeans twice.
I know, twice, because it's been 35 years. But when you see certain things, it subconsciously will trigger an emotional response. Now, for a person who's younger, they might not have seen it. It's so cool. But for other people, you get a certain emotional response. So from a marketer standpoint, you should be at least aware of the trends of what you're doing. So for example, certain color patterns, certain big versus small in text, those are the places where these starter themes are not necessarily inaccessible, but just look like you're wearing something from a decade before, clothing-wise. And so I would be very cautious about just relying on that versus the alternative free, out of the box. Elementor gives you boxes and components and pre-made stuff that are very contemporary. They're widely padded, spaced, big fonts, easy to use. If you just stick with that stuff and you don't know what you're doing, you won't look silly. But the designs that come in those pre-bundled things, they just have somebody who's kind of like, let's get all the crap together we can't use anymore and throw it in there. And you know how that goes.
Well, yeah, we're going to go for our break. We'll be back. I think we've had a good discussion. We've got a small panel, but I think it's been a pretty good discussion so far. Hopefully you agree, listeners and viewers. We'll be back in a few moments. Coming back. I think it's not been a bad discussion. On to story 3. This is from WP Engine, and it's multi-CMS's rises in enterprises. It comes with a small article and then a very detailed PDF, folks. I was intrigued with this story a little bit because one of my clients does a lot of work with larger clients in this realm. And I got the impression that most enterprises are looking to centralize things, but on the other hand, finding the Swiss Army knife that will do everything, some of these enterprise CRM, I've had regrettable experience of having to use them and also consult other people, and there's a lot of things they don't do very well. So Spencer, I'm waffling a little bit. What did you think of the article and the PDF, or what the basic theme of the story, basically?
Right. I've had the pleasure of helping you with some of your clients that have decided that they want to create their own Frankenstein monster. What I think is interesting, and we're seeing in our practical use, with WP Launchify, I primarily focus, Luke and I, on entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, small to medium business, but we have a few enterprise level clients. And what we find in that world is, like the Windows 95, or I can't switch for 25 years till, the Internet Explorer has already gotten cobwebs on it, is that many of them are stuck with integrated systems that they can't unhook from. And so what has to happen with WordPress, which it's actually quite a good Band-Aid for, is you oftentimes have to use it as a way to kind of like crack a door and let some fresh air in, whether it be through one of their business operations, or maybe it's from their main information to the public side of things. But when you do, then the people that are the dinosaur maintenance crew, the dinosaur zoologists, they can start using that as a way to feed the old dinosaur, and then they meet up at the database level. So because WordPress is really so old school, a LAMP server, which has Apache or Nginx doing the, MySQL. I'm talking gibberish for many people, but the idea is like, it's not all the fancy new toys necessarily. The dinosaur guys or girls can connect to it in a way that, okay, We're going to have the crew who's running your business put stuff into WordPress. Now, you could do it through the normal front end. You could do it through the normal back end. Or we've often used things like ACF Pro and some other to make a custom back end interface where you can type the data in, like an automotive client. You have a thing where you only need to type in the fields for each single auto. But because you got dynamic content management like Elementor on the front end, the design people can design something cool and the two worlds meet. But the dinosaur people, let's say you have a Salesforce integration, they can get to the same data about your users. And so those things actually end up working really well together. But here's the caveat. The mindset and the politics are where this shit hits the fan. Because the enterprise clients that we deal with have projects that they have previously spent upwards of $500,000 to do what a solopreneur has done for $2,500. And it's 99% just mental masturbation over what should we do next and who's going to be responsible and will this work and who's going to be the one at fault if it doesn't go. And it's not about just getting it done. So from that standpoint, I like a solopreneur who is able to come in and do this kind of stuff, like on a consultancy basis, but it requires a lot of trust from the enterprise because, you know, heads roll in an organization when something doesn't go right.
So, Sally, what did you?
And of course, if they're not paying $10,000, it can't actually be useful, right?
But that's another point too. Like, how is it possible that this could be done when we did this on Drupal for $500,000? You're doing it on WordPress for $2,500. How is it possible? It's
right. What's wrong with it?
It's because you guys effed up. That's what happened. Like,
yes. So it's looking at this, I'm like, so this means WP Engine is going to start offering headless WordPress in some fashion.
I would imagine,
publishing via, WordPress to Gatsby or something.
Well, I don't
like
think
that.
WP Engine does anything for. There's a reason for everything that
Well, I don't think they would have put that kind of research in if they weren't thinking, what is our next move as a business.
Yeah, they have a bigger problem, and I've discussed it openly, and we talk about this in marketing automation. See, WP Engine was created by Jason Cohen at a time when the resources available were really just shared servers. We didn't have the VPS cloud. And I was fortunate enough to meet and talk to Jason at the time. I had nothing to do with him making his business. He's a genius. But they're running a fleet of shared servers that are no different in many ways than just HostGator or GoDaddy or Bluehost or anybody else. If you do not allow them to impose their draconian caching and varnish on you, you are no better off than if you're on Bluehost. And the shit is going to hit the fan with them. They know it. They've started to shift their business model towards a one-stop services operation because, as we just talked about, everybody else is able to offer VPS for everybody, unlimited everything. Like hosting is a commodity item. So headless.
Yes, but nothing is ever truly unlimited.
But I'm saying headless WordPress is one of the evolutionary things that will be part of this, where you'll be able to go to a company and they'll be like, look, the hosting's there, the CMS is there. What do you want on the front end? What do you want on the back end? Do you want this to connect to this, CRM or not? All those things will be part of the process because I don't think WordPress by itself will just be an only standalone option. It'll be an accessory, like somebody's going to make a menu for you and your party, right? What do you want for your appetizer? What do you want for the main course? What are the drinks? And you can a la carte it. And I think they're smart enough business-wise to adapt. And I don't mean to offend anybody at that level because they were the first to come up with this managed hosting. But I think they internally know it. Huh?
It was Pagely. It was Pagely.
Fair enough, but I'm talking about early days. So I would argue
they were a very early mover in this space. And I think you're absolutely right. That hosting companies and most other companies have to keep adapting their value proposition and demonstrating they're doing something useful. And it was last year, maybe the year before, when they redesigned their website and suddenly it's like digital experience platform, and I'm like, what is that when it's at home?
The whole model of hosting, it was a pretty dark, crummy business model anyway, because my understanding of it, and I might be totally wrong here, was that, you used to ram, some hosting providers, they knew most of their customers would hardly use the space that they provided, so they rammed as many sites as possible. And then
yeah, and then
those that had problems, when they used the support was cut down to the minimum, so they had a crappy experience, and they would bugger off. They wanted them to bugger off because the other 90% never bothered them hardly ever.
Yes, my husband's website once got slash-dotted, and suddenly there were millions of visitors, and the entire server went down. And which was why he ended up switching to a host that would scale. That, but it's, I mean, of course, it's like, well, servers cost money. We want to use as few as we can get away with. And for some people, that is fine because, like 10 people a month visit their website probably, and it's not doing much.
It's just like a health club model. I mean, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, it is. You're totally right there.
Health clubs and hospitals all oversubscribe, right? You sell 12 times more memberships than you could ever fit into the club legally. And yet the reason is because they know 11 people won't show up. And in that case, when you do a business model like a, managed hosting, and that's why Pagely, from according their own reports, moved to this executive level service, is that they realized that the commodity value had been diluted by so many people offering the same commodity, right? That's just how commodities work. So whatever's going on, WP Engine has the illusion still for many people that it's special, but those that deal with what they do every day and the consequences of it know that deep down inside, we believe that Heather Brunner and whoever is still in charge there is having conversations like, what is our next move? Because this can't go on forever, especially when we start moving into these kinds of services, because this kind of thing will not fly on a WP Engine as is. You cannot run a multi-mix of things when you're limited to 10,000 page views in, as an arbitrary number. That's even ridiculous because the server has to be banged all day long for lots of dynamic stuff. And are those hits or not, So it'll change, and that's okay, because I think that the difference is how do you handle it from the customer standpoint? And I don't see any indication that any of the customers that have used my services personally or advice have ever said, I was handled like shit or they treated me badly. They did feel a little let down that they weren't informed ahead of time of these limitations, but I can't necessarily hold it against WP Engine to come out and say, hey, big advertisement, like we're running a school bus and you're buying a seat on a school bus, so don't tell anybody. I mean, that would be bad for their business. But that's factually kind of what's happening, where you have to get in, ask the right questions, know the right things to get from their service people, and they will manage to give it to you. But even then, it's sort of a
it's, as I've advised people before, your hosts are going to limit something, and you want to check out, am I going to be dinged for like number of visitors? Am I going to be dinged more for bandwidth? Am I going to be dinged more for and they will usually tell you what the limits are on things, except your client doesn't know what any of that means. So it's like, okay, well, I know, if you know in advance, your site is likely to have, lots of visitors, but not be serving media or anything particularly, then you probably want something that allows you to have lots of visitors. If you know there's going to be more stuff getting downloaded or uploaded or whatever, and it's a bandwidth issue, you want to check that you've got bandwidth. But yeah, I mean, everybody in any kind of technology business has to realize that, well, stuff gets commodified. We have to keep adjusting. We have to keep up. What was okay, 5 years ago or even 2 years ago is insufficient. And the problem with any dynamic system, not just WordPress, is that you run into performance issues because of all the server back and forth. And so, combining it with something that gives you a static output is handy for speed and for security.
Right, on to the next story. Well, this is a kind of fun one, but I think it's got a deeper underlying message maybe. The world's most valuable company uses migrant worker as human hand sanitizer. What did you What did you think of this one, Spencer?
I mean, this is just bad behavior, right? I mean, it's sad. I don't know if this person did something that is deserving of this treatment, but this is like a, scarlet letter kind of thing. This is just really sort of sad to see that. And this is, I mean, people are treated so poorly in so many other ways, like exponentially beyond this, but just in a corporate setting and in a way that is just like, what's the point of this? It just seems like they're trying to shame this poor guy. I just felt sad when I saw this, and the fact that bad behavior can be justified at a corporation at that level, but you also have to consider the cultural and the other locations.
Yeah, just interested, the ins and outs of it.
I mean, I'm curious about like, what's the difference between this and the people who stand outside of strip malls with those big signs? The person who's dressed up as the Statue of Liberty at tax time, or the ones with the people. I've seen people like dressed up as sandwiches.
This guy's being exposed to everybody that might need hand sanitizer. The difference is like, it just at a human level of this human, he's being forced to do something that would put him at risk. Let's say that's the part that bothers me a little bit. But also,
did he do it voluntarily? How much did they pay him? I think we maybe need a little more context. Is this
the question? Why would
yes? I mean, I don't know why they would think it was a good idea. Because
why would you invent
stupid?
This?
But. But I think the people standing outside the tax office dressed as the Statue of Liberty are pretty stupid also. And in Oakley, okay, it's already been almost 80 degrees and it's March.
I'm just saying, like, if you have a situation where somebody wishes to do some crazy marketing stunt, like, dress up like a pumpkin and wave their thing, like, fine, that's a marketing stunt. My question would be, if this individual had come up with the idea, it's one thing. But I have zero doubt that he was told, you must do this. And so somebody above him was the jackass that decided, let's make a human walking hand sanitizer. And even if they were innocent in their intentions, not because he's Asian or whatever it is that they're racially profiling him, but he's just have some person act as a walking hand sanitizer. It's like, what the hell is going on at that level, especially in a pandemic where you're forcing a human being to walk around like a toy? That just seems like really bad concept.
Yeah, I just thought it was a metaphor of our times, really. I just when I first saw it, I thought I just had to introduce it. On to story 5. What are we doing for time? Yeah, maybe fit this one. I'm going to need your help here, Sally. How do you pronounce this CEO, Kim?
Good Lord.
Ajustad?
I would guess that J is a Y.
Why?
I'm not sure about the
He is silent.
So how would you pronounce it?
Yerstad.
Yerstad?
Gigstad.
I think the G is silent.
Right.
At least I show people how to tell people how to pronounce my name.
Yeah. So CEO Kim Gijard, how Mel Poet became the email leader for WordPress. What did you think of this? He's smiling. What did you think of this one, Spencer?
Just like say, there was a guy back in the day who used to do beer commercials. His name was Norm Crosby. He did like Miller Lite commercials, and he was funny because he was a comedian, but he could always say everything wrong, and it was hilarious the way he said it. He used to do like Mean Joe Green. So you're like the Norm Crosby of our generation.
I can't help if I've got dyslexia, you bloody bastard.
This Mail Poet is an interesting piece of software for those that are looking for a lightweight internal email capability. It's really quite good. We tested it at WP Fusion. It works with WP Fusion, but it's limited in what it can do for tags and so forth. So I would say that it works out as somebody who was otherwise thinking of doing like MailChimp and does not have a lot of heavy interest in doing marketing automation. very clever. I think the author may have taken some liberties by saying, the email leader for WordPress.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So it's, of the actual do your mail within WordPress itself, it probably is. Of all email solutions that people with WordPress sites use, no, probably not.
Perhaps, yeah.
No, I totally agree with you there. We've integrated it with my fully hosted solution for learning management systems. So we're offering MailPoet at 5, 10 and 20,000 marketing and other usage in our packages. And we tested it, and it's as sent it out a newsletter, it's fine, but then we combine it with Groundhog, and we had to produce a plugin that would communicate with the two, which we've done. But Groundhog is a much better for the actual automation. It's on a different level. And then if you want to use external system, obviously we provide WP Fusion if you want to integrate it with Active Campaign or Drip or something. But and on their free product side, they offer it up to 2,000 emails for free. Well, that covers an enormous amount of users, because most users don't get anywhere near 2,000 subscribers for their newsletter. I would say that would cover about 80% of people that might be looking at it. So I think he has got a good product, but if you just want to use it as like MailChimp, it's a very good alternative to MailChimp. Would you agree with that, Spencer?
Yeah, I mean, MailChimp still, to me, is the great simple alternative because their functionality, the user simplicity, the interface, everything. They're still stumbling, surprisingly, with their marketing automation capability. They don't really have true marketing automation. They have some sort of hybrid. However,
it's been really painful, hasn't it?
It's not painful because the beauty of it is, first of all, Adrian is making progress with Groundhog, but at the end of the day, there's a real bifurcation of what you need to do and what you should be doing. And the difference is that most people don't realize yet, but then they have this aha moment, that you don't need to collect a list of 35,000 strangers. Instead, with some basic marketing automation, you just have a revolving door process. So people come in, they either say yes to what you're selling or not, and then they're out the other way. And if they drop off into your sales bucket, they're a user on WordPress, which there is where you can keep them and then continue to directly communicate with them from WordPress directly, not needing this old-fashioned, let me get your email and I'll send you 65 follow-up messages that you didn't ask for, because nobody needs or wants that. Nobody can pay attention to that. So if they come by your health club, they like what they see, they decide to join, then you got them at your health club and you can just put a message on the door when they show up, versus let me keep bothering you about something you clearly don't give a shit about.
All right. We're gonna wrap it up. We're gonna go for our recommendations. And my recommendation is is MailPoet, and AppSumo at the present moment has got a fantastic offer with MailPoet. Basically, it's a lifetime deal, multiple, no limit on clients that you can use the service with, and you can buy up to 50,000 emails per month, and that's per client. So, and this is a lifetime deal. It's one of the best deals that AppSumo's done, and it's an amazing deal with MailPoet. So if that's some interest in, hopefully by the time this podcast goes live, probably on Monday, they haven't totally sold out. I jumped on board and got my credit card out straight away because it's just a fantastic.
It's amazing how good AppSumo is at persuading us to do that.
Well, it was a no-brainer, Sally.
I mean, because they are smoking deals. I have noticed that I will sometimes, it's like, oh, well, that looks really useful and it's a great deal. And then it's like,
never use it.
I forgot I bought that.
Right.
Yeah, you got to be careful because you can go potty. So I only occasionally buy things because you can go mad. But it was a total non-brainer. This deal, it was just an amazing
We could
deal.
do a whole show about lifetime deals and the psychology of why they're good and bad for the user or the people selling it. Because
Well, you're taking your risk because they might disappear, or they might do a WooCommerce on you, might they? They might just walk away from the deal. We can no longer do this deal for you. They were notorious, weren't they? So, what got a recommendation of the week, Spencer?
yeah, this week I'm actually going to recommend a great podcast. I've listened to almost all the episodes. On NPR, Guy Raz, R-A-Z, has How I Built This. Just one of the most professional, obviously it's, NPR, so he's got some experience and resources, but one of the most professionally done, entrepreneurial, motivated stories. But it's like people that you've heard of before, big companies. But the way he presents it is not your typical loosey-goosey format of a podcast. It's a produced show. So almost every episode, I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing. I'm saying like even your show, Tim Ferriss, there's lots of shows that are great shows, but they're loosey-goosey format, right? Conversational. This is a produced show. Yeah. So there's like a sample intro, and there's like a story, and there's a mystery, and there's the hero's journey. And so,
well, if you listen to my interviews, it's a mystery.
You never know what you're going to say.
A lot of my guests have said that. That was a mystery to me.
But
so what was it you were trying to find out? Actually, you're quite good at bringing people back onto what it was you wanted to ask, Jonathan.
Yeah, I've been schooled in the BBC Radio 4, haven't I, Sally? You can tell.
This is like a non-comparison. There's lots of vegetables in the store. Just because you eat a tomato doesn't mean the cucumber has to feel bad. I mean,
I just unleashed my English sarcasm.
Just because Guy Raz has a good show doesn't take away from WP-Tonic.
There we go. I take that as high praise. Sally, have you got anything you want to recommend to the listeners?
Yes. The WordPress community team has been hard at work to help meetup organizers and WordCamp organizers cope with all of the
plague.
Well, yes, with the need not to hold large gatherings. So in the WordPress community handbook under Meetup Organizer Resources, there is now a nice section on organizing virtual events and things you can do to transition. And there's a link in there also to more, I think it's the Community Hub page with another set of massive useful links for taking your event online. And so if you are somebody who organizes any kind of event at all in or out of WordPress, you will probably find that useful.
That's great. And thanks, panel. I think it's been a great show. If you want to support the show, folks, go over to the WP-Tonic website and join the newsletter. The newsletter has been totally revamped in 2020. We're going to have articles about e-learning and course building, but also a ton of content about WordPress, and also the recommendations, the best recommendations of the month from the weekly show will all be there, and some unique content as well. And if you do sign up for the newsletter, every new subscriber, one new subscriber per month will be chosen and announced at the end of each month on the roundtable show, and they will win a prize up to $100 or plus, depending if one of my sponsors will cough up a free plugin license, whatever. Nudge, nudge.
Hint.
Never mind. If they're not feeling generous, I will buy you something nice for you, listeners and viewers. We'll be back next week with another great roundtable show. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.
Bye.